1930, America had 6.8 million family farms. Today, we have 2 million family farms. Today, according to a study by American Farmland Trust, we have 940 million acres dedicated to agriculture and farming, but we're going to lose up to 18 million acres by 2040. And most of it will be done through urban sprawl. Right now, American farming is living the perfect storm. Our population all over the United States is booming, especially in beautiful communities like I live in, like Lexington, Kentucky, Cincinnati, Nashville. These beautiful communities are affordable, they're beautiful, they've got great universities, and people are leaving these big cities and they're going to these beautiful cities. And as a result, it's putting enormous pressure on these local communities to satisfy the demand for housing. Everything from multifamily housing to single-family homes. And these communities are taking the steps of buying up farmland. And you've got the average age of farmers out there, which the average age today is 58 years old, and they're getting their doors knocked on by big developers offering $100,000 up to $150,000 per acre. And with all of the stress that they're under, they're taking these deals. And we're losing farmland by the minute. On top of that, today, large corporate farms, as well as just large family farms that are in the conventional commodity-based farming, they're having a really tough time. All the input prices on fertilizer and all the things that go into running a farm everything from there is going up. While at the same time, you've got commodity prices of what they're able to get from the market, those prices are going down. They're being cut off internationally by the tariff wars that we're currently having, and losing business that you used to have and you could rely on from China is now gone. They're having a tough time, and it's putting pressure on them to even stay in business, and it's making it where it's even easier to accept a developer's offer. On top of that, the demand for food in the United States, because our population is growing so aggressively, the food demand right now is at an all-time high. More than 46% of the food that we eat, especially in the area of vegetables and produce, 46% of that is coming in from foreign countries. And we're getting less reliant on local farmers to produce our local vegetables and produce and all the meats that we enjoy. On top of that, you're looking at the next generation of farmers. It's a tough wheat bench right now. Young people want to get into farming, but for those who've grown up on the farm and seen mom and dad really suffering trying to just hold on to the farm, they want nothing to do with it. 63.5% of aspiring farmers are women, and they want to get into it. They want to, quite frankly, open up organic farms. They want to give back to nature. They want to create jobs in their community, but they can't afford to buy farmland because the prices are going up so fast. They don't have the operational experience because they can't get it fast enough to be able to operate a farm. And all the things that go into managing an operation are at an all-time high in cost. So we've got a very difficult time attracting talent into farming because they don't see it as a profitable value proposition. And for those who want to get into it, they can't afford to get into it. Many of them have college debt. They've gone to school for 4 years at a great university, and many are graduating with $50,000, $100,000, $150,000 or more in debt. So oftentimes they already have a mortgage. And when the banks look at that, they're like, you know what, you need to get a job. You need to stop worrying about going in your own business and pay off this first mortgage before you ask us for a mortgage for a farm. So that is making a ton of pressure on the whole farming sector. We've got to find a way to change this dynamic and what's going on. I want to share with you what's happened to my family's farm over the last 137 years. My great-grandfather, James Coleman, was born on the farm that I own today here in Lexington, Kentucky. It's in Fayette County, one of the more prosperous counties here in Kentucky. He was born into slavery on this farm in 1845. He got his freedom by joining the 5th Colored Regiment troops of the Union Army in 1863. On June 7th, 1863, he immediately was stationed in Milliken's Bend, Louisiana, where it was a very distinguished battle where recently freed slaves defeated the Confederate troops. President Lincoln and General Grant were so impressed that these undertrained, undermanned, limited equipment were able to beat the more armored Confederate troops. So much so that President Lincoln decided to accelerate the recruitment of recently freed slaves into the Union Army, and it led to the Union Army actually winning the Civil War. My great-grandfather came home in 1865. He got promoted all the way to sergeant, and he came back home here and had his beautiful wife, Lucy, with him, and they got married here in Kentucky, and they purchased the land that he had once tilled as a slave. And the way he was able to do it is that Booker T. Washington, who was an incredible leader at the time, very innovative, found a way to encourage African Americans through their church by creating the Union Benevolent Society that encouraged all of these different communities, these African American communities, primarily in the South, to pull whatever little bit of funds they had together to create pretty much like a GoFundMe, or a fund that they had locally that they created themselves because they could not get loans from the mainstream banks. And as a result, all the members of the community who wanted to buy farmland now had access to capital. And my great-grandparents took out a whopping jumbo mortgage of $1,200 from the Union Benevolent Society and purchased the land that my great-grandfather had once tilled as a slave on March the 27th, 1888. They had a total of 6 kids on the farm: William, Sam, George, and John, my grandfather. And they also had 2 beautiful daughters, Susie and Sally. And they were vibrant. This community called Uttingertown that they lived in was a modern day Wakanda. They traded their goods in the community. They bought from each other. Everyone in the community owned land. They were making money. They were sending their kids to different universities, primarily historically black colleges and universities, and they were thriving. The next generation, my grandparents took over, and that was John and Molly, and they raised a total of 7 kids on the farm. 5 out of 7 of their children were able to go to college as a result of their ownership of Coleman Crest Farm and their excellent stewardship in making the farm productive and profitable. My parents, Sam and Cleo Coleman, they had met at Kentucky State University and graduated from Kentucky State in 1949. They took over the farm when my grandfather, John, passed away. His wife, Molly, passed away a lot earlier, and now John was left with the farm, and he passed away in 1949. And my parents, Sam and Cleo, took over the farm, and they got married in 1950, and they raised a total of 5 kids on the farm, and I was one of them. Coleman Crest Farm was a vibrant farm. I became the manager of it when I was 12 years old. My father came home one day and said, "You're in charge." I said, "Daddy, what does that mean?" He said, "That means you take care of everything." And I loved the challenge. He said, "You're going to get paid 3 hots and a flop." I said, "Daddy, I'm already getting that." He said, "You are, but you're going to start earning it from this day on. And on top of that, I'm going to send you to college just like I'm sending your brothers and sisters." He made do on it. My mother always wanted me to go to Howard University. She said, "Baby, you're so smart. You're like those Kennedy boys. They went to Harvard. We're going to send you to Howard." And they made do on it. And the night before I left to go to Howard University, my father had me to come into their bedroom, and he said, "Reach in that drawer," pointed the drawer that they had. And I reached in it, and he said, "Look at that envelope in there that says Citizen Union on it." And I opened it up, and I looked at it, and he said, "How much does that check say?" I said, "It says $10,000. He said, "Howard University's $1,800 a year. I put a little extra in it, but that's all we've got. I saved the $5,000 from all of your hard work, from the profits that we had, and you managing the farm, and I took out a note of $5,000 on the farm. You're going to need to pay that $5,000 off, and I'll be dead and gone before I do, so don't lose the farm." And I was well on my way. I was on my way to trying to go after the American dream. An American dream that included finding a beautiful wife, my wife Kathy, who was the prettiest girl at Howard University. And I saw her for the first time. I said to my good friend, I said, "Babe, Kathy Clash is going to be my wife." He said, "Buddy, she's pretty and she's smart. She wouldn't have either one of us." Well, I succeeded. On June the 2nd, 1984, Kathy and I got married on campus, and we took off in an incredible journey. We lived in 13 different cities over the next 27 years. She worked for Oracle. I had worked for Pepsi and Philip Morris USA and Oscar Mayer and American Express, and I ran economic development for Prince George's County, Maryland, and Westchester County. We had a beautiful home in Scarsdale, New York, and we were just living the American dream. Unfortunately, Kathy lost her life to cancer in 2020, and so I decided we had purchased the family farm from my mother, and we became fourth generation owners of Coleman Crest Farm in 2001, and it had just turned into a forest. And it was looking just how I was looking and feeling, lost and abandoned and very sad and depressed. And so I decided to sell our beautiful home in New York after Kathy passed away to come home to restore my heart and to restore my family's farm. And I'm pleased to let you know that I made a big announcement. Mayor Gordon, our mayor, and city council, and everybody came out to my big sound off on what I was going to do with this beautiful farm. And I said I want Coleman Crest Farm to be the first African-American owned farm in the state of Kentucky to be certified organic by the USDA. I want to create an aspiring farmer program. I want to celebrate our farm and our community through agritourism. And I'm going to build a brand new house. 5 years later, mission accomplished. Last year, we had a record year. On 1.4 acres of farmland, we had over $100,000 in gross sales, and more than 90% of what we produced was shipped through a partnership called Feeding Kentucky, and we shipped it to local food banks where we were providing 100% all natural, fresh, locally grown, organic produce to our fellow citizens that didn't know where their next plate of food was going to be coming from. And it has just been an exciting time. I opened up the new house here, had it built, and that dream came true in 2023. And today I'm hiring members of my community that need good jobs. I've got interns working for me this summer, and they're having a blast. Bottom line is that farmland creates a dynamic explosion of growth and prosperity for our communities. We've got to find a way to preserve our farmland, while at the same time, we've got to help our local community leaders to satisfy the demand for housing. We can meet conflicting objectives. We've got to provide incentives to developers and our local communities to be able to penetrate the penetrate. That's what I learned at Pepsi, of how do you focus on building in the existing store that you have, which that means you've got to be able to help mayors and council members and city planners to find better ways to improve their zoning and their permitting so they can build more housing in their cities versus through urban sprawl. We've got to find a better way of better supporting our aspiring farmers. We've got to help universities like the University of Kentucky and Kentucky State. The UK came up with a new aspiring farmer program through a grant with the USDA, and we've got to help our universities to get the grant money and the resources they need to be able to help our next generation of farmers so they don't have to rely on the commodities market, and they can replicate the success of Coleman Crest Farm, not just on sending their kids to college, but also having their farms where they're profitable and they're not price takers, but they're price makers by offering premium, locally grown, organic foods here in their local markets and charging a premium for it so that their farms remain strong, powerful, and sustainable for the future. And then lastly, we've got to be able to work with the private sector. We've got to find new and innovative ways to help all of our aspiring farmers and our existing farmers to refinance and to hold on to their land. We've got to be able to help them to do it in a way where the cost is lower and where the profitability is high if they take the financing and they can get it paid off and create the right kind of revenue streams to offset that debt. We've got to have partners in the private sector, from hedge funds to private equity funds, to be able to work with the government and with universities to be able to create the similar concept that Booker T created called the Benevolent Society, that literally changed the lives of for my family, over 300 of my great-grandparents' descendants over the last 137 years. We can do it. We can bring back agriculture, we can bring back farming, and we can make farming profitable. We can help our working families, and we can help aspiring farmers to succeed. We can help direct our current farmers to be able to hold on to their properties by helping them and educating them on diversifying their crops and not relying on the whips and ups and downs of the commodities market. We've got to be able to help them to grow locally and preferably organic produce to where they can get a good premium price and to be able to sell directly versus having to work with the middleman and being able to get their goods to the market. It's going to make us all healthier, and it's going to make our farms more successful, and it's going to make our farmers wealthier. I know what it's done for my family. And again, my great-grandparents, with their courage and their determination of being able to seize the moment, even after being slaves, they were able to capitalize on the moment and to get financing that they needed, as well as through literacy, through the Julius Rosenwald School, one of Booker T's other friends. He created these one-room schoolhouses in local communities throughout the South, in African-American communities, where now they had access to literacy. And in teaching them how to actually make their farms successful through land-grant universities like Kentucky State University and University of Kentucky and others. We can bring back farming in the United States, and that doesn't mean that we don't offer good housing to all of our residents who want to move to these beautiful communities like Lexington. But we've got to do it smartly. We've got to find a way to meet these conflicting objectives, and we've got to do it in a way where we don't wipe out farmland for the future and eliminate the opportunity for aspiring farmers to be able to get into farming. Coleman Crest Farm is a petri dish for success. And my great-grandparents were not the only ones that had that and enjoyed that kind of success. Other recently freed slaves during the late 1800s purchased farmland, and by the end of the 1920s, with Booker T. Washington's model of the Union Benevolent Society, African Americans in the United States went from being slaves to owning 14 million acres of farmland in the United States, which at the time represented 15% of the farmland in the United States. And that action and that model transformed wealth, it transformed families, it created a vibrant economy, it created sustainability for families and the communities. And we've got to find a way to replicate that kind of model to unlock the opportunity behind farming. I hope you join me in this journey and this mission.